It's called a panic room.
What?
A safe room. A castle keep in medieval time.
I've read about these.
They're quite in vogue in high-end construction right now. One really can't be too careful about home invasion.
It's a hit movie about a small concrete bunker-like room, and it's giving thousands of moviegoers nightmares in this post-9/11 era. It's also prompting a number of people to construct real-life panic rooms, or safe rooms, as the industry calls them euphemistically. One builder says this is the bomb shelter for the new millennium, a reference to the bunkers that were popular during the Cold War air raid drills back in the 50s and 60s. A sense of security these days doesn't come cheap. Costs start at $6,000, but can reach up to a couple of $1,000,000. And the rooms range from small impenetrable vaults to multi-room fortresses complete with high-tech communication systems. So who buys these secret hideouts for the rich and scared? As the New York Times called them, our next guest won't give us names, but he's been constructing secure environments for governments, businesses, and yes, individuals for more than 3 decades. Al Corbi joins us from New York City. His company is called The Designer, and he worked as a senior designer with the Justice Department for 23 years, developing what's called hardened facilities. Welcome.
Hello, sir.
All right, Mr. Corbi, I got to tell you, I haven't seen the movie yet, I admit, but in this panic room issue, isn't there a less expensive pharmacological way to handle this? Perhaps Xanax, or for the stepped-up people, Clozaril, Risperdal, or Zyprexa?
We know it's interesting. We all have alarm systems. And when your alarm system goes off, the police respond. And they're usually there in about 30 minutes. Problem is, the bad guys, whether they're going to kidnap, rape, steal, whatever they're going to do to you, they're going to do it and be gone in 15 minutes.
All right, but I got to ask this. How many of the panic room, the safe rooms that you've built have come into play, and how many of them are just another form of solace to people who feel better but never had to use them?
Well, actually, if they're only solace, like the spare tire in your trunk, they serve a purpose.
Well, hold on.
Just the psychology.
No, I still want to know, what's the hit ratio, so to speak? I mean, how many people have said, look, you know, thanks for building that panic room because it came in handy because the guys that I had dreams about really did show up at my door?
Well, it's interesting. You never hear about the ones that work. You only hear the stories in the press of the children that are kidnapped or the people that are stabbed in their beds, the people that don't have them. People that do have them don't call up and say thanks.
Well, okay. The trouble with this whole thing is we're a little bit silly-eyed. I know you're serious.
You like that Xanax comment is the problem.
You're a serious person, Mr. Corbi. Let me ask you, sir. You had federal government work. Did you actually work or design any of the bunkers that we hear about with respect to President Bush and Vice President Cheney post 9/11, or actually during 9/11?
Ooh. Let me say that somebody did them, and as senior designer for the Department of Justice, that would probably fall under that category.
Oh, so you know something. I'm not going to ask you anything you can't tell us. I was just interested in that, and our viewers might be interested. Let me go back to the subject at hand. I'm one of those that sort of grew up during this bomb shelter period. I remember then Governor Nelson Rockefeller talking about it and so forth and so on. How protective is this? I mean, at one extreme, I'm going to ask you, obviously they don't protect against daisy cutters or smart bombs and things of that sort if we had a full-scale invasion. But I guess your point is, at the low end of it, which is in the movie, the communications broke down, but normally that wouldn't happen. How far could you go? Let's say there was a war, some kind of guerrilla war. How far would these things go in protecting?
Typically, the middle range one that you and I would put into our facilities are armor piercing. So anything that any weapon that a person could carry into your house couldn't shoot through it. Now, if somebody comes in with a jet-guided missile,
yeah,
I mean, who's going to do that? The point is, if they show up at your house, they can't carry anything sufficient to get into it.
Stingers? Were they stingers?
What's it going to do to them?
If you fire a stinger at it, you know, stinger bomb.
But I'm saying if you're standing there with it to fire it, it's going to kill you too.
No, no. I mean, if
a Laws rocket. Someone fires a Laws rocket.
If you're invaded somehow, I'm interested in the invasion thing because I'm a little paranoid about that myself.
Okay, there's 2 levels. If men show up to your facility, your home, your place of business, anything that they can carry can't get into these cores. If they're remote, firing something at it, and you have the financial wherewithal, you can be transported away from harm's way.
Oh. All right, well, Mr. Corbi, are there ever been any people that you said, look, I'd love to help you. Your building is just not too secure. You got to move somewhere else. Or have you ever told people, look, you really ought to, I mean, given your circumstances, you ought to think about going to New Mexico or Idaho or something?
Yes.
Really? There are people who you just said, listen, I cannot protect you in New York City, say.
No, I'm sorry. Two different questions. Oh. You can protect anyone. There could be a facility that requires so much that the recommendation is change the facility. But if they want to stay there, you start getting involved in mobile safe rooms, rooms that can actually transport the person away from harm's way.
People have those. Do people have those in New York City?
Is that right? In other words, what you get out? I'm just going to make this up as some kind of tunnel underground, which gets you to a spot where you can then take a jet helicopter or something. Is that what you're referring to?
Helicopters usually aren't a good solution because they're accessible once they're in the air. There are other ways to get people quickly, remotely away from the facility without ever putting them in visual contact with the assailants.
All right, now you saw this movie, obviously, and you've seen a lot of, I'm sure you've seen all the Hollywood movies that have described this kind of phenomena. Are any of them right? I mean, are most of them...
Oh, Panic Room is incredibly accurate. But keep in mind that the movie even tells you that was 30-year-old technology.
But
they purported to be that.
The phone broke down, right?
No, the phone actually didn't break down.
I haven't seen the movie.
She didn't think about hooking it up. She had just moved in that morning. She had gotten the main house line hooked up, but she just didn't get around to it. Had you hooked it up, it would have worked.
Okay, are there, this is my own paranoid fantasy. Are there rooms where you can actually do more than just hide out? I mean, are there like rooms that you build where you could be a little more offensive?
In Europe, the rules are a little different than here in the United States. In Europe, if you break into somebody's house, all bets are off. You can do anything you want to them.
You can fire back.
The rooms can be incredibly offensive.
Oh, I like that.
I thought that your own man's home is his castle. If you wanted to, you could do the spring gun.
Now all these gun control laws have stopped that out. Those Europeans talk a good game, but in the crunch. Anyway, is it true, Mr. Corbi? Let me ask one question. There's certain clients.
I'm fascinated by this. I have to say, I'm fascinated.
I know you are. I am too. Even paranoids have real enemies, and that's why they go after this thing, right? They really know out there there's a problem, and they must be protected. That's your basic clientele.
Actually, the basic clientele may be the paranoid, but in fairness to the gentlemen that usually call me in, the first thing out of their mouths are, I want to protect my wife and children. It's very rarely their Renoirs. It's very rarely their Hope Diamonds. It's always the wife and the children.
Before my producer shoots me, could you in 5 seconds tell me, is there a middle-class package here that's affordable?
Well,
5 seconds?
Yes.
How
for
much?
$6,000 or less, 90% of the U.S. could be protected tomorrow.
All right, you're on for $6K. You're a great guest, Mr.
That's
Corbi.
Actually less than Zyprexa.
I appreciate it.
All the best.
I might even go for $12,500. Anyway,
Give me a call.
Our thanks to Al Corbi.